Hello, welcome to Sad English Academy. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you how to use how come in questions. Just like the W8 question word why, we use how come to ask for a reason or cause of an action or happening. So there is no difference between how come and why except in grammar structure. But how come is generally used in informal communication. You may have seen people use how come in movies, television talk shows, and in native communication. Therefore, you can use how come instead of why when talking to your family members, friends, and any other people who are quite familiar to you. So let's get started with the lesson. To begin the lesson, let's look at this sentence with the WH question word why. Why do you wake up early every day? In this question, you can see the WH question word why is used at the beginning of the question, while the primary auxiliary verb do is used after the WH question word why to make it a grammatically correct question. And also, we use the primary auxiliary do here as we consider you as a plural noun. There you can see after the question word why, there we get the primary auxiliary verb do before you, and that makes the sentence why do you wake up early every day? Now study my second question. That question is, why did you stay at his house yesterday night? Once again, you notice the structure of this question. There, the WH question word why comes at the beginning of the sentence and which is followed by the auxiliary verb did. Therefore, you can easily understand that when you use the WH question word why to make a question, you have to use certain auxiliary verbs after the question word why in accordance with the tense and the subject of the question. Now let's see the same questions using how come. When you use how come to ask our first question, you get how come you wake up early every day? We can use how come just like the WH question word why at the beginning of the question, but it is not followed by any auxiliary verb. There, after how come, you get a regular affirmative sentence, which is you wake up early every day. Now notice, in that question, we cannot see the change of word order. Now, let's ask our second question with how come. Then you get, how come you stayed at his house yesterday night? In that question also, you can see how come is at the beginning of the question, and how come is followed by the regular sentence structure of an affirmative sentence, which is you stayed at his house yesterday night. Now you can realize the most important factor here is that when you use how come to ask questions, you don't have to use some other auxiliary verb after how come, unlike the WH question word why. So it is more easier to use how come than why when you ask for a reason for something. Now let's study this further with these questions. My first question is, why does she live in such a crowded city? When you use how come to ask the same question, you get how come she lives in such a crowded city. Now notice the difference here. In the first question with why, the question is in simple present tense. Therefore, we have to use does not only because the question is in simple present tense, but also because the subject she is singular. However, when you use it with how come, you have to be careful that you have to use letter S after the verb, which is live, to make it a grammatically correct affirmative statement. With how come, you have turned that sentence in the simple present form to a question of simple present tense. Therefore, you have to ask the question that how come she lives in such a crowded city. Now let's go to the second question. Why did Harry buy a new house? When you use how come to ask the same question, you get how come Harry bought a new house. Now here again, notice the difference. In the first question, as it is a past action, we have to use simple past tense in the question. Therefore, we have used auxiliary verb did after why. Then you get the verb by in the sentence. So because of the effect of did, we get the verb by in the question. Now when it comes to how come, you can ask this question, how come Harry bought a new house? Now remember, this question is in past tense. Therefore, after how come, when you use the affirmative statement, you have to use bought, which is the past form of by, as the main verb of the question. Therefore, we get the question, how come Harry bought a new house? Now let's move on to the third question. My third question is, why has the company made a low profit this year? Now you can see this question is in present perfect tense. Therefore, we have to use has after the question word why, and also we have to use the past participle form of the verb. Now when you ask the same question using how come, you have to ask, how come the company has made a low profit this year? Again, you can see after how come, we use an affirmative sentence, which is the company has made a low profit this year. Now you can understand we have to use a present perfect tense affirmative statement after how come. Then you get the question, how come the company has made a low profit this year? Now look at my fourth question. That question is, why was he so stubborn before the marriage? Now you can see this question is in simple past tense. Therefore, after why, we have used was as a primary auxiliary verb. However, when you ask the same question using how come, you could ask, how come he was so stubborn before the marriage? There also, you get the affirmative statement after how come. With the addition of how come at the beginning of the statement, it has been made a question. So now you know all about it. The best way to remember the correct way to use how come is to practice the structure whenever possible when you engage in communication. So please use how come whenever possible to speak with more confidence. So finally, I would like to invite you all to subscribe SAN English Academy to learn the correct use of English. So thanks a lot for joining with me. Until next lesson, take care. Bye bye.